When you first press start on Zelda II, The Adventure of Link, you immediately sense that something is different. Something is a little unsettling. The triumphant theme from the original Legend of Zelda is gone, replaced with a quieter, more urgent melody. The camera pans down not to a familiar top-down view, but to a side-scrolling landscape. Link isn't a tiny figure wandering a tile-based overworld anymore. He's a fully realised swordsman, facing enemies head-on in fast and reactive combat. You're no longer swinging your sword in broad arcs to clear space. Instead, you're crouching, blocking, and swinging that sword. It's more intimate, more physical, and for many players in 1988, it was more intimidating. This shift was shocking at the time. The original Legend of Zelda had defined an entirely new kind of adventure game, an open world of mystery where players could explore at their own pace and uncover secrets through curiosity. Zelda II, by contrast, immediately threw the players into danger. It replaced mystery with mastery, enemies now hit harder, dungeons required memorization and precision, and every mistake could set you back in punishing ways. The simple joy of exploration was replaced by the tension of survival, and for fans expecting another open-ended quest, this felt like a betrayal. But in hindsight, it was something far more interesting. Nintendo was experimenting with the language of game design itself. The tone reflected this change, so when you die, and you will, the screen doesn't just restart you, it fades to black, flashing a chilling phrase in red, the return of Ganon. It's a taunt, a punishment, and a narrative sting all at once. There's no comforting fairy or second chance, just the knowledge that your failure has literally brought the villain back. That phrase became infamous, a symbol of Zelda II's harshness, but it also captures the game's spirit perfectly. A world where heroism isn't assumed, but it's earned. It's easy to forget just how radical this was. In the late 1980s, sequels rarely experimented. The safe route was to polish, not to reinvent. Nintendo could have easily made Zelda 1 but bigger, but instead they took one of the most successful games ever and rebuilt it from the ground up, combining side-scrolling action like Castlevania with RPG leveling mechanics and a sprawling overworld inspired by traditional adventure storytelling. The result was a game that felt alien yet ambitious, awkward, although it was visionary. Well, today Zelda II stands as one of Nintendo's boldest creative gambles, a sequel that dared to question its own identity. It asked what Zelda could be, not just what it was, and while it's remembered as the odd one out of the Zelda franchise, it's also the one that taught the series a valuable lesson, that reinvention, even when it fails, shows us how legends evolve. Well, first of all today, why Nintendo changed everything. Well, to understand Zelda II, The Adventure of Link, you do have to look where Nintendo was in 1987. The first Legend of Zelda had just revolutionised gaming. It was one of the earliest truly open-world experiences, letting players explore at their own pace with almost no guidance. It sold millions, became a cultural phenomenon, and it set the standard for what adventure meant on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So when it came time for the sequel, many would just assume that Nintendo would simply make more of the same. But that is not what they did. Instead, they handed the project to a new team with a very different goal: to reinvent Zelda from the ground up. Unlike the original, which was directed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, it was led by Tadashi Sugiyama and Yasuhisa Yamamura. Miyamoto remained involved as producer, but the development was intentionally placed in new hands, a creative shuffle designed to bring a fresh perspective. That decision shaped everything that followed. Rather than revisiting the open-world formula, the team wanted to explore a more linear, combat-driven game that tested players' skill and reflexes. This wasn't just about making a sequel, it was about experimenting with what Zelda could become when stripped down to its fundamentals: a hero, a sword, and a journey. The technical leap from the first Zelda to Zelda II also played a role. Released first on the Famicom Disk System in Japan, the game took advantage of features that weren't possible on the cartridge-based original, saving progress directly to disk, more complex side-scrolling movement, and also richer music as well. The developers used that extra power to build a game that merged action and RPG elements in a way few console titles had attempted. The overworld now served as a navigation map, a place to travel between towns and palaces, while the real gameplay happened in side-scrolling sequences full of enemies, traps, and also platforming challenges. Nintendo's reasoning was simple but risky. Players had already mastered the first Zelda, and they didn't want to sell the same experience twice. Instead, they wanted to challenge players in a new way, to make them earn their victories through precision and not just exploration. It was a gamble, but a deliberate one by Nintendo. In an era where sequels often copied their predecessors, Zelda II stood apart as a declaration of their creative freedom. Even the narrative approach reflects that ambition. Instead of a blank slate hero wandering aimlessly, Zelda II gives Link a specific mission: to awaken the sleeping Princess Zelda and restore balance to Hyrule. There's an explicit sense of lore and continuity, a bridge between The Legend of Zelda and what later would become the broader Zelda timeline. In a sense, Zelda II is the first game in the series to treat its world as a continuing story, and not just a standalone adventure. And in every way, Nintendo was experimenting, with technology, with storytelling, with identity. The result was a sequel that confused as many players as it impressed, but one that revealed a crucial truth about the franchise: Zelda was never meant to stand still. Well, next up today, we've got RPG mechanics. So one of the most striking changes introduced in Zelda II: The Adventure of Link, that was to embrace the RPG style mechanics, and it was a first for the series. Whereas the original Zelda had become a game of exploration and item discovery, Zelda II turned progression into something more tangible, something you had to earn through combat. Every enemy you defeated rewarded you with experience points, which could then be used to level up one of your 3 core stats: attack, magic, or life. The system gave players a sense of growth and personal investment that no previous Zelda game had offered. You weren't just collecting hearts or stronger swords, you were actively shaping what kind of hero Link would become. That change created a fascinating tension. On one hand, it added depth and a satisfying feedback loop. The more you fought, the stronger you became, and battles that once seemed impossible slowly became manageable. On the other hand, it introduced risk. Dying before leveling up meant losing that precious experience, a punishment that could feel brutal after a long grind. And the game forced players to make a choice. Do you push forward and risk losing everything, or retreat and spend your points safely? This constant negotiation between greed and survival made every fight matter. It wasn't just about reaching the next palace, it was about managing your own growth along the way. The magic system also added another layer of complexity. Throughout his journey, Link could learn 8 different spells from wise men in various towns, ranging from simple utilities like jump and shield to powerful game changers like thunder and fairy. The magic meter became one of the game's defining mechanics, a limited but versatile resource that replaced many of the inventory-based items from the first Zelda. Where before you collect bombs or boomerangs, here you learn spells and have to decide when to spend precious magic power, and that gave Zelda II a sense of strategy uncommon for its era, asking players to think ahead and use their resources carefully. And then there were the lives, a controversial addition that still divides players today. Instead of infinite continues or respawning you at a last checkpoint, Zelda II gave you a set number of lives. Lose them all and you'd be sent back to the starting palace, no matter how far you'd progressed. It was a really harsh system that tested patience as much as skill, but it also reinforced the game's central theme of perseverance. Every victory felt hard won. Every mistake carried a weight. It's no wonder that modern players often revisit Zelda II with save states or rewind features, tools that finally let them appreciate the design without suffering the punishing repetition. In combining these elements, levelling, magic and limited lives, Zelda II became something rare, a hybrid action RPG years before that term was common. It took the immediacy of an action game and fused it with the long-term strategy of an RPG, making every battle part of a larger journey towards mastery. Even if it alienated players expecting another open-world adventure, this experiment would echo through the series for decades. Later games like Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword and even Breath of the Wild would borrow its ideas, not the format but the spirit, the sense of growing stronger through struggle, one battle at a time. Next up we have difficulty and perseverance. So if there's one thing that Zelda II The Adventure of Link is infamous for, it is the difficulty. Even today it stands as one of Nintendo's most punishing games, not just within the Zelda series but across the Nintendo Entertainment System library as a whole. Every encounter demands precision, enemies don't simply move towards you, they react, they block, they strike back with unsettling speed. Iron Knuckles, the game's armoured knights, famously parry your attacks and force you to think like a swordsman. You gotta duck, stab, jump, retreat and repeat. It's a rhythm that almost feels like a fighting game and not an adventure game. And for a series that had begun with free exploration and discovery, Zelda 2 was something far more intense. This was a trial by combat. That intensity is amplified by the game's unforgiving structure. There's no mid-dungeon checkpoints, no mercy restarts. Losing all your lives doesn't send you back a few rooms, it sends you back to the very start of the game at the North Palace, no matter where you fell. It's a gut punch, especially after clearing multiple palaces or gaining valuable experience. Many players in the late 80s never even saw the game's later stages because of this system. But for those who did push through, the difficulty became part of the reward. It was a badge of honour. Completing Zelda 2 wasn't just about finishing another adventure, it was about conquering one of Nintendo's most demanding challenges. What's fascinating is that the game's design doesn't feel cheap so much as unyielding. Enemies have patterns to learn, palaces have logic to decipher, and the overworld hazards can be managed with skill. The game teaches patience through punishment, forcing you to slow down, to approach carefully, to treat every fight like a duel. In this way, Zelda 2 embodies the idea of perseverance more than any other entry in the series. It's not a game that hands you a victory, it expects you to earn one. Modern re-releases have softened that edge, and in doing so revealed the brilliance underneath. So with Nintendo Switch Online service, you've got the save states and the rewind functions. Now players can now appreciate the combat system, the pacing of the game and the sense of growth without that crushing repetition. You know, what once felt unfair now feels quite deliberate, an intricate challenge tuned for mastery. You know, some modern critics have noted Zelda 2 quietly teaches a lesson about persistence. The more you fail, the better you get, and every small step forward matters. In many ways, that lesson, the value of endurance and determination, is the game's true heart. Beneath its rough edges lies a message that fits perfectly within Zelda's mythology. Courage isn't just about avoiding failure, it's about continuing in spite of it. Zelda 2 doesn't just test your reflexes, it tests your will. And in the franchise defined by the Triforce of Courage, perhaps there's no entry that captures the spirit more honestly than this one. Okay, next up, what it invented for future Zelda games. So for all the talk about how Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link strayed from the original formula, it's easy to overlook just how much it gave to the series. Beneath its strange structure and the harsh mechanics lies the DNA of modern Zelda. So many ideas are here that would become foundational to the franchise, from the magic meter to the towns, from learned abilities to the narrative continuity, all first appeared here. Zelda 2 may have been the most unorthodox entry, but it also laid down the groundwork for the future games that followed. The most obvious innovation is the inclusion of towns. For the first time, Hyrule felt like a living world, rather than an abandoned battlefield. You could walk through villages and talk to townspeople, rest in the inns and learn from wise men who granted you new spells. Each town even had a name: Raru, Ruto, Saria, Naboru, and Darunia, names that later appeared as sages in Ocarina of Time. And that continuity wasn't an accident. It showed Nintendo beginning to see Zelda as a world with history and people, not just puzzles. Towns added warmth and humanity, turning Hyrule from a mysterious wilderness into a true civilization. Then you've got the magic system, a concept that would persist throughout the series. Instead of collecting dozens of single-use items, Zelda II gave Link a growing arsenal of spells: Jump, Shield, Fairy, Thunder, and more, each requiring careful management of a finite magic meter. This introduced a flexible resource system that later titles would refine into magic bars, stamina wheels, and other limited gauges. It also encouraged strategic play. Do you spend your magic to make a fight easier or save it for when it really counts? That balance between power and restraint became a hallmark of Zelda's design philosophy. Zelda II also introduced learn sword techniques, another first for the series. In towns, Link could meet trainers who taught him new combat moves, the upward and the downward thrusts. They expanded his fighting options and deepened the skill ceiling. This idea of gradually mastering combat through mentorship would reappear decades later in Twilight Princess, where the hero Shade teaches Link secret sword skills, and even subtly in Breath of the Wild, where players learn through experimentation rather than dialogue. In that sense, Zelda II planted the seed for Zelda's long-running theme of earned mastery. And of course, there is Dark Link, one of the most iconic finales in the entire series. Facing your own reflection as the final boss is symbolic and haunting, representing both Link's literal and spiritual test. The fight's simplicity, a duel of pure swordsmanship, stands in stark contrast to the magic-heavy chaos of the preceding boss battles. It's a moment that encapsulates everything the game is all about: struggle, self-improvement, and triumph through perseverance. And the motif of battling one's darker self would resurface in Ocarina of Time. You know, for all of its reputation as an outsider, Zelda 2's fingerprints are everywhere in the series. The world building, the progression systems, the combat philosophy, it all evolved from ideas that were born here. You know, it wasn't just a deviation, this was an experiment whose successes quietly shaped the Zelda games that we know today. While other games refined the formula, Zelda 2 expanded the possibilities. It proved that Zelda didn't need to be one thing, and that bravery in design can be just as powerful as courage in the story. Well, next up today we've got scale and structure. So one of the most surprising things about Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link is just how big the game is. Despite being confined to the limited hardware of the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Famicom Disk System, it offered one of the largest and most ambitious worlds Nintendo had ever built at the time. In fact, some retrospectives have noted that it remained the biggest Zelda map until Breath of the Wild, nearly 3 decades later. Unlike the tight, screen-by-screen overworld of the first Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2's world sprawls across multiple continents and islands, each connected by bridges, caves, and perilous routes. There's a sense of a long, physical journey, not just a collection of dungeons, but a true expedition across Hyrule. The overworld design plays a key narrative role, acting as a kind of meta map that visually communicates progress and danger. You see towns, forests and deserts and mountain ranges from above, but when enemies or obstacles appear, the game zooms in, pulling you into a side-scrolling battlefield or cave. And this clever shift in perspective gave the illusion of a world with layers, something far beyond what the Nintendo Entertainment System should have been capable of. It's a subtle but important innovation. Zelda 2 isn't just large, it feels alive, with random encounters that mirror the unpredictability of travel and the tension of venturing too far away from home. Yet despite its vastness, the world of Zelda II is carefully structured. The game trades on the open-ended freedom of its predecessor and a more linear, gated progression. Palaces are locked behind required spells or tools. Jump spells can be used to reach new ledges, hammers can break boulders, and rafts can cross the sea. Each region expands the possibilities of movement and exploration, encouraging you to revisit earlier areas with newfound abilities. This unlock by skill or spell design quietly foreshadowed the Metroidvania genre that would blossom years later, and it also set the stage for how future Zelda titles would use items and keys to both puzzles and progression. But that structure did come with trade-offs. Many players found that Zelda II's world felt empty or disconnected, more like a series of corridors than a vibrant kingdom. Towns offered life, but most of the overworld was filled with punishing battles and stretches of silence. Yet that emptiness was part of its mood. There's a quiet melancholy to wandering across Hyrule's plains, watching dark shadows of enemy encounters drift towards you. It feels lonely, dangerous, and also epic. Qualities that wouldn't return to the series until Breath of the Wild. In its structure, Zelda II took The Legend of Zelda from a mysterious maze to a true journey, one that emphasised distance, growth, and endurance. You weren't just uncovering a world, you were crossing it. Every step forward felt like progress earned, every bridge a symbol of survival. Beneath its harsh exterior, Zelda II was telling a story, not just of heroism, but of travel, of how far you're willing to go, and what you learn on the road to courage. Well, next up today we have reputation and re-evaluation. Few games in Nintendo's history have carried a reputation as divisive as Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. When it first released in Japan in 1987, and a year later in the West in 1988, reactions were mixed, even confused. Some critics praised the ambition and scope, while many players were baffled or frustrated by just how different it felt from the first Legend of Zelda. Gone were the open fields and the item-driven puzzles. In their place stood unforgiving sword duels, random encounters, and an experience system that punished mistakes. For a series that had built up its identity on discovery and accessibility, Zelda II felt harsh, cryptic, and relentlessly difficult. At the time, that shift in tone and structure clashed with what players wanted from a Zelda sequel. The original game invited exploration and rewarded curiosity, but Zelda II demanded discipline, patience, and grinding, traits more associated with RPGs compared to adventure games. As a result, it was branded the odd one out of the Zelda franchise, a strange outlier that many fans quietly skipped or dismissed. Even within Nintendo, the formula was never repeated. By the time A Link to the Past arrived in 1991, the series had returned to its top-down roots, effectively signalling that Zelda II's experiment was over. For years it was remembered as the odd misstep between two masterpieces. But over time, that perception has begun to change. As critics and fans have revisited Zelda II, especially through emulation or virtual console releases and the Nintendo Switch Online library, a new understanding has emerged. Beneath the punishing design lies a game of remarkable intent and intelligence. Its combat is deeply tactile, built around timing, positioning, and the use of learned abilities. Its world, while linear, is thoughtfully interconnected, with a clear sense of escalation and payoff. Its difficulty, once seen as a flaw, is now often praised for forcing its players to truly master its systems, rather than brute force their way through. Modern reviewers and retrospectives have highlighted how Zelda II embodies a lesson in perseverance and design courage. It's a game that does not compromise to please the audience. Instead, it challenges them to grow with it. Nintendo Life and Inverse have reframed it not as a failure, but as a vital experiment that expanded what Zelda could mean. For players discovering it today, especially with the benefit of save states and rewinds, Zelda II feels more like a hidden gem. Flawed but fascinating, demanding but deeply rewarding. What once seemed like a misstep now reads as a bold step forward. In hindsight, Zelda II was a necessary risk. The awkward adolescence between the series' childhood wonder and the mature identity. It's the game that dared to ask whether Zelda could be about struggle as much as discovery, and in doing so it carved out a legacy all of its own. The odd one, as it turns out, might just have been one of the most important games in the series. Looking back now, Zelda II: The Adventure of Link stands as one of Nintendo's most fascinating paradoxes, a game both deeply flawed and also quietly revolutionary. It's remembered as the sequel that broke tradition, the outlier that confused fans, yet also the foundation for much of what The Legend of Zelda would become. Its side-scrolling combat and RPG systems, the punishing structure were ahead of its time, and while they alienated some players, they also showed that Zelda could be more than a single formula. It could be reimagined, reshaped and challenged, even at the risk of failure. In a way, Zelda II is an expression of the Triforce of Courage. It doesn't hand you the power, it demands that you earn it. The game doesn't guide you gently or celebrate every small victory, it dares you to persist through loss, repetition and frustration. When you finally defeat Dark Link and restore peace to Hyrule, the triumphant feel feels different from any other Zelda ending. It is not just about saving the princess, it's about proving that you could endure the journey itself. That emotional payoff, born from a struggle rather than spectacle, makes Zelda II one of the most personal adventures in the series. Today, with modern conveniences like save states and online guides, more players than ever are discovering the game's hidden brilliance. Stripped of its punishing edges, the game reveals a thoughtful rhythm, one that rewards learning, experimentation and persistence. What once felt impossible now feels deliberate, even elegant in its restraint. It's a reminder that beneath every tough exterior, there can be a design that is deeply intentional, crafted to make success mean something. If the first Legend of Zelda taught us the joy of exploration, Zelda II taught us the value of perseverance. It showed that failure is not the end, it is part of the process. That is why decades later its message still resonates. Zelda II is not the wrong Zelda, it's the brave one. It dared to be different when it didn't have to be, and in doing so it expanded what this series, and maybe what these games themselves, could be. Yeah, as the credits roll and the screens fade to black, you can almost hear what the game has been whispering all along. Courage isn't found in victory, it's forged in struggle. Well, that is it. Those are my thoughts about Zelda 2. This is actually one of my favourite Zelda games in this series, and the first Zelda game I ever played. So long-time viewers or listeners of the channel will probably know that this is the first Zelda game that my dad bought me when I was a kid. And so I've got really fond memories of Zelda 2, and I love this retrospective. I did play it a couple of years ago. It's still as good today as it ever has been. And if you've never played Zelda 2, I know maybe the graphics don't live up to modern standards, but if you can get past that, and because of the save states and the rewind function, it is actually now much easier to get through. So if you've not played Zelda 2, I would definitely recommend going back and playing through it. It's really good fun. Don't listen to what everyone has to say about it. Go in with a blank slate, with your own pair of eyes and your own mind, and make up your own decisions. I think it is really good, and I thoroughly recommend that you play through it. Well, let me know your memories about Zelda 2 down there in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. But that is it for this video today about Zelda 2, and thank you so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Trifroce Times. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, thank you so much for watching the video, but today I'd like to let you know about the Trifroce Times store. If you like Trifroce Times content and you want to get some merchandise, then browse the online store today. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and loads more in all shapes and sizes and colours. Also, if you didn't see something on the store that you want, then let me know in the comments. Comment on the video and let me know what you want to see in the merch store, and I will make it happen. So if you enjoy Trifroce Times and want to go above and beyond to support, then the store is a great place to do that. And also, you're going to get some high quality merchandise as well, so check out the Trifroce Times store today with a selection of merch below each video, and you can also check out the store link in the description if you'd like to browse the whole store. But this video is brought to you by Trifroce Times Backstage. This is available through Patron or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Trifroce Times. Free content is core to Trifroce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Trifroce Times Backstage today. So help me make Trifroce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it's time to go back to the video.